Okay, let's flatten some wood without breaking the bank. You could hand plane, but that takes far too long and requires a lot of practice to get anywhere near perfection. The next alternative cost-wise is a plunge router, which has an adjustable height setting. This model also has a 1/2 inch collet, which will be required over using the 1/4 inch collet. If you don't already own a plunge router with a 1/2 inch collet and wish to save some money, have a quick look on Craigslist in your local area to find a used one for sale. You'll also need the correct bit for flattening wood. These milling or flattening bits are frequently used on CNC beds for leveling a scrapboard. There are some high prices out there for these types of bits, and it's worth paying those prices if you plan on manufacturing slab tables or something similar on a weekly basis. But for a weekend warrior like me, I needed something on a lower budget. So after reading several positive opinions written by international buyers, I decided to buy a 2 1/4 inch diameter bit with a 1/2 inch shank from a Chinese e-commerce website. The cost for the bit came to $24, including track delivery, which took 17 days to arrive to my house from China. Next you'll have to buy an MDF board. I paid around $20 for a full sheet of 3/4 inch MDF, but if your project isn't too big, you'll probably get away with only needing a 1/2 or a 1/4 sheet. First I cut the baseboard, which needs to be slightly bigger than the wood you wish to flatten. Now for the side rails, which need to be around 1/4 inch higher than the board you will be flattening. I fixed the side rails to the baseboard using wood screws and pre-drilling the guide hose. I made sure that the rail heights are exactly the same for the whole rail length on both sides. Next to build the router slide, which needs to span the sled rails, so the router can cut up to the edges of the workpiece on both sides. First the slide base. The width needs to be around 1 mm over the router base diameter. I cut the surrounding 4 sides to the correct length, and the height should be at least 1 inch above the baseboard. Now to box in the slider base sides, again using wood screws and pre-drilling pilot countersunk hose. I initially cut out the router bit slot using a circular saw, and then I made some holes at the ends of the slot with a Forstner bit. I messed up a bit here as the slot was still too narrow for the bit head, but no worries as the new bit can cut its own slot. I had to make some additional rough cuts on the 2 sides to let the router handles pass by. Before starting, I waxed the sled side rails and both sides of the slider base. Off camera I hot glued some small wedges underneath the workpiece to make it as level as possible and to avoid any movement whilst the router is cutting. My first project using the router sled is to flatten a bathroom sink worktop that has warped over time. I made 2 complete passes with a router. I set the router depth to remove 2/64 of an inch on each pass. It is far better to remove the uneven material in fine passes, as your router bit will last far longer. After the routing process is complete, the wood is made 100% flat by sanding first with 80 grit paper and then on to finishing with 150 grit paper. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. If the video was useful, please consider giving it a like or subscribing to my channel. Many thanks.